Hello and welcome to Chapter 3, Lecture 2, what is all about materials in Blender. So what I will do is I'm going to talk about how materials work in the real world, what kind of surfaces they have and how light reacts on it, and showing you some samples. And that's pretty much it for Lecture 2. In the following lectures, we go deeper into this material. But I like to start very simple and showing some reference. So, what is a material? Why some materials look rough and some shiny? I'm showing you some wood samples, bricks, leaves, and water. And why did I pick these samples? That's because we're using these a lot in 3D scenes. And they all have their own specific material look. Like that's, I think, the best way to describe it. So I'll just show you some real world samples and talk about it. So what is a material? Well, the core is the substance or substances of which a thing is made or composed. Well, that's really a sort of a mathematic explanation. But what this means is that every material or every object has its own unique surface, and that results in a very specific look. So I show you some samples about leaves, a brick, and you can see a sort of a wooden wall, water, and some shiny balls. And they all look really different from each other. I mean, you cannot compare the shiny balls with the brick. But why is this? In fact, we can say, well, they look shiny because they are smooth and the rock looks really rough. But if you work in 3D, you need to know what's behind this. That's pretty much I can say, because if you don't know, you will never understand how to create that. So, and that's the whole function of this chapter, understanding the way materials look and how it works and how we can design it. So yeah, that's it. So this is a sample, how, in my opinion, and how others describe this, how light and objects work. So what you see on the left, this image represents a shiny object, like this shiny ball. And on the right is a rough object. So imagine you are standing, like if you look at the left image on the arrow right there, and you look to the material. So the light is the sun, and it's shooting like 1 trillion of light rays. So they are traveling to the earth, they're reaching this object, and a shiny object has a smooth surface, and these is reflecting the light that way. So it will look glossy. If we look to the right and we're standing at the same position, well, some of the rays will reach us, but others will go all the ways, and the material will look rough because you won't see full specularity. That's a sort of a very basic explanation about how we see objects. Both are orange, but both looks very different from each other. So how does it work with wood, for example? On the right you can see an explanation, but to give you some information out about the wood looks, you need to know that wood can look shiny and it can look rough. So if you have, for example, a wooden floor in your house and there is some extra layer to protect it, it can look very shiny when the light is hitting it. But if you have, for example, some planks outside, the rain will hit it, and during the year it will look more rough, like you get some scratches on it, and it won't look really shiny. And that has everything to do how the wood looks into detail. So there are all types of wood, and it's not really you can say what particular look they have. Later we will focus more on wood, but on the left you can see some of the samples. It's really interesting material. So the next one is a brick object, and where wood planks sometimes are specular, most of the time bricks, and I'm talking about medieval scenes, bricks looks really rough. There's almost no shiny material visible when you look at it, so no specular. And this is a huge mistake a lot of 3D artists make when they create brick walls, because we're recreating it, we also have control about the specular. And it's sometimes really cool to add a lot of specular on the bricks, but in the real world they look really rough, like the samples show here. So keep this in mind, that when you work with bricks, it's a very diffuse material and just a little bit specular. Of course, it also depends on if it rains and they are wet, they have an extra layer, same as the wood, so they become more reflective, but most of the time it's a very diffuse material. And we also have leaves, and this is a very unique object. And has everything to do because it is an organic, very thin material. So it doesn't look really special when you see the leaves on the ground, where they are all sort of brownish. But if you look to the green leaves, you can see they are sort of fluor color green, and that has to do by the translucency. So imagine you have the leaf and a light ray is hitting it. What really happens is the light ray is getting absorbed by the material, and it's letting it through, and the color becomes green. So that's how the color, how do you say, the material get this specific look. And later in this chapter I will go full into detail about the translucency effect and why it looks so fluoric. So that's the reason now I'm showing you the leaves. And there is water, and water is a very shiny material. It may look very easy to recreate in a 3D environment, because this is very reflective, but it actually isn't. So the reason why is that if you look at these sample images, on the left, top left, we have sort of a rough water surface, and it looks really reflective. But if you look at the image below, you can see it's more diffused and not really reflective, more sort of diffuse reflecting. And there is also the water on the beach, where you can see the guy in the boat. It looks like a transparent layer, and of course you can see the reflection, but it has a complete different look than the image above, where you can see the water ripples and more reflection. So water can have all the different types of the material look, and it is not just about adding a glossy plane and making it a bit bumpy. That's not how water looks. We're not going to make water in this chapter, but I just wanted to show you that water has some very unique elements of how material look. So, and here is a sheet with some categories. So water is one of the most reflecting things. Of course, it really depends, but if you see it in this category, water is very reflective, same as a mirror, ice, and chrome. And we go one step further to a more diffuse. Now we have the leaves, and things like plastic, paper, and skin have these kind of same aspects of that. And then we have wood, that's more diffused, and the brick with things like rust, sandpaper, and foam. And this helps maybe a little bit to understand what types or like what kind of object, how reflective it is. And of course you can discuss if paper or we say rust or foam, they may belong in another category, but it shows you that you all have different types and they have different roughness. And very good to know. So see you in the next lecture, and bye bye.